What's up, y'all? I'm DJ Nate, and this is the Ben Joravsky Show. This show is brought to you in part by you, the listeners. As we find our bearings as an independent podcast, we would greatly appreciate your extended support, whether that be regularly listening to our show, sharing this episode, following us on social media, or if you have the means, you can donate at thebenjoravskyshow.com.
Hello again, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Baby Bobby and the Bird Flu Wednesday. That's a long title, ladies and gentlemen. Monroe Anderson sitting back. He's not an expert on bird flus or viruses or aviation or what but I think he can appreciate and understand bullshit. And right now, there's so much bullshit coming out of Baby Bobby. Baby Bobby, of course, is Robert Kennedy Jr., the son of one of the great Democrats of the last century. And it kind of has lost his way in his life and has ended up as this quack. And as such, has been welcomed by Donald Trump into the inner circle of MAGA and has one of the most important jobs in the administration. He's the nation's top health official. And as such, he went on Fox News the other day and gave his solution really what they're talking about is the rise in the cost of eggs. This is what bothers them the most. So in the United States, in the last cycle, as you recall, Donald Trump, MAGA, Fox, were orating over and over about the rising cost of eggs, and it passed on to like a virus to the non-Fox empire, and they started orating about the rising price of eggs. And then when Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump, one of the leading explanations for why she lost, which was offered up by so many people, including friends of mine, nobody is immune to this, is because of the rising cost of eggs. And I personally believe the reason she lost is because America couldn't bring itself to vote for a black woman for many different reasons. But very few people agree with me on that point, with the possible exception of Monroe Anderson. Well, Delmarie Cobb, Keena Collins, but most people are sticking to the rising cost of eggs. Well, the cost of eggs are still rising in the age of Donald Trump, and doesn't seem to be particularly bothersome to Americans. Isn't that interesting? They only cared about it when Kamala Harris was running for president. Interesting. So anyway, Baby Bobby is saying the way to deal with this, the problem is the flu, which is killing birds, which when the birds catch the bird flu, then they feel compelled, the farmers, the way they do it is they cull the flock, they kill the birds, and that limits the amount of eggs that are produced. They are then subsidized, the farmers are, by the federal government. I'm not hating on that. I'm with it. You know, when there's a downturn for whatever reason in the economy, the government comes together and protects people who are most affected. Okay, so I support it when it's farmers. I also support it when it's people who live in the city of Chicago. Somehow or other, it's only farmers that are the beneficiaries of this. Isn't that interesting, Monroe? I wonder why that is. Wonder if it has some of the same reasons as why Americans didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Anyway, so his Bobby Kennedy's solution to the bird flu, which is bedeviling the U.S. poultry farms, let the virus rip. Don't cull the flock. Just let birds just die. And then the article in the New York Times is filled. Everything that Bobby Kennedy says is then countered by something an expert says. And this is the point I wanted to get to. The disdain that Trump and MAGA and Baby Bobby have for anybody who is viewed as an expert may be one of the most significant dangers we're facing right now. There's a reason why someone is an expert, like on science or, on viruses. They've studied it. They've like gone through a very trying process, peer review process, proving that they know what they're talking about. They just don't go on Fox TV and blab. Every single point that Baby Bobby says as to what they should do about the spread of the bird flu is countered by something an expert says. But that doesn't matter because the person's an expert in the world of MAGA today. They're not to be considered trustworthy. And then when you press MAGA But they say, well, we didn't really mean it. We're just trolling and trash talking. That's their ultimate defense. We're just annoying Ben and Monroe. That's the only reason we exist. We just want to annoy Ben and Monroe. We don't really believe the stupid stuff our people say. We just want to annoy them. And I'm like, okay, well, if you want to annoy us, just say stuff, but don't do it. How about that? Just say stupid stuff that is ridiculous on Fox TV, but don't actually, like, I don't know, stop culling the flock so that the virus spreads and more and more birds die, and the possibility that eggs are infected and the virus gets passed on to humans increases. I don't know. Maybe just do what the experts say while trashing the experts. Just say, and then it's a twofer. You don't kill people in this country. You don't allow the virus to spread from birds to humans, and you make Ben and Monroe feel bad. It's a twofer, MAGA. I'm just proposing that. Say stupid things, just don't do stupid things. That's my suggestion. I had the same kind of suggestion to Chicago's mayors for years and years. And from time to time, they would take it. They would say some stupid thing in the Sun-Times, the Tribune, and it would, of course, get printed because, whatever. When the mayor says something, the Sun-Times and the Tribune, well, the mayor said it. It has to be true. And then sometimes they would introduce legislation that countered the stupid stuff they were saying to the Sun-Times. So there is precedent for this. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring on the great Monroe Anderson, patiently waiting. Monroe, do you buy my suggestion? It's okay for MAGA to say stupid things as long as they don't implement the stupid things they're saying. That's my suggestion. What do you think?
I don't think that's a good idea. The problem with that is they say stupid things, and they have a stupid people following. So even if they don't do the stupid things, then some of their followers will, and people will get hurt.
I see. Killed. Okay, well, I tried, MAGA. I tried, okay? I did try. I gave you permission to say stupid things, to troll us, if you didn't do the stupid things. I've in terms of, we're going to shift gears. We're not going to have a big conversation about the bird flu, but I noticed that there was Charlie Kirk, the right-winger propaganda guy for the Republican Party, or for MAGA, I should say. He wrote this essay, his name was on an essay. I don't know if he wrote it, in which he said, he didn't want to hear another word about the rising cost of eggs. And then, isn't that funny? He couldn't stop talking about it when Biden was president, but he didn't want to hear another word about it. And he blamed the whole thing on Biden and the killing of birds that are infected, which is the traditional way that farmers have attempted to stop the spread of the flu, Monroe. And I'm like, wow, this is so preposterous. This can't be the policy. And now I'm saying, oh yeah, this is the policy. This is what they're going to do, Monroe. They're just going to let it rip. So follow me. It's
let's go back to COVID. Trump didn't want statistics and facts on COVID because he thought that hurt. So he figured, okay, keep it a secret. How many people are dying from it, etc. And it won't look so bad. So this is nothing new. We've seen this movie before.
Yeah. It's nothing new, except he has even more power this time around than he had the first time around.
He does.
That's the new and scary part.
Well, and he has more stupid people around him than he did the last time. He had some people who could act as guardrails. He doesn't have that at this point. And he's doubling and tripling down on all his dumb ideas. And so Humpty Dumpty is bound for a great fall.
All right. Guardrails is a good transition to two issues I want to talk about. So one guardrail would be the judiciary, and another guardrail would be the Democratic Party, our beloved Democratic Party.
And a third guardrail is the stock market. Don't forget about it. which was supposed to mean a lot to him, but right now it doesn't appear to be.
Yeah. Well, so that's a different. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Like the stock market itself doesn't have the potential to directly stop Donald Trump from doing something stupid. You're absolutely, but a downturn.
It does because, first of all, this is how he measures himself.
Yeah. This is the point I was
Its
going to
success
make.
is on how the market is doing.
All right.
But more importantly, it matters because of 401ks. A lot of people who thought that Trump was going to make them richer is finding just the opposite is happening. They're looking at their retirement investments.
Yeah.
And it's going down, down, down.
Yeah. So what'll be interesting to see if the propaganda wing of the MAGA movement, which would be like Charlie Kirk, will come out with an article that says, shut up about your 401ks. So they said, shut up about the rising price of eggs. They don't want to hear about it now that Donnie's president.
Right.
Will they say, shut up about your 401ks and then find some contrivance to blame it on Biden? Like they did they're still blaming Biden for the rising cost of eggs.
Right.
Which is quite you got to be really dumb to fall for that. But America elected Donald Trump. So we'll see. All right. But going back to my point, the Democratic Party and the judges of the land have the ability to act as a guardrail. In other words, and like stop something Trump's doing, force him to stop. And if they choose to,
maybe.
Okay. So we'll take it point step by step. We'll start before we get to the judges.
Okay.
Let's start with the Democrats.
Okay, so, let's start with the Dems. Okay.
All right. And I know a lot of people wanted me to ask you this question, so I'm going to ask you this question. So last week, the Dems in the Senate had a filibuster that was blocking the Senate from voting on a continuing resolution which would have funded the government. And the argument for the filibuster, the argument for not voting for the continuing resolution to keep the government funded, was that the way that they were going to fund the government was going to take away from Congress its ability to control the purse strings. It would give Donald Trump even more power than he already has, and it was also going to it would codify power going to Trump, but it would also approve cuts that would be devastating to, in particular, the city of Washington, which Trump seems to have a particular disdain for. But for many programs that are really true and near and dear to the Democratic hearts. And yet Charles Schumer, the senator of New York, who is the president of the Senate, tag teamed with about 9 other Democrats, including Richard Durbin, our senator from Illinois, to voting to end the filibuster and essentially pass and set up a vote where the Republicans could then pass the continuing resolution. And then in like fine city council fashion, Monroe, after voting to lift the filibuster, the Democrats voted against the budget, which is what aldermen do in the city council all the time with tax hikes and budgets. So many of our listeners were upset by this, and they were curious as to your thoughts and how you see this. So are you with Schumer and Durbin on ending the filibuster, or do you think the Democrats should continue the fight? Go ahead.
Okay, let me give you a Fiddler on the Roof analogy. On the one hand, if they had stopped the government, the Dems had stopped the government, then Donald Trump would have had, with the government down, he would have had a chance to continue disassembling the government in general, just wiping out jobs and people and policies and et cetera. On the other hand, by them voting to keep the government open, Schumer argues that it will give the Democrats some control over what Trump and Musk could do or not do. I went from wanting to shut down the government to believing in what Schumer said. But now that I've thought about it some more, there is no other hand. They should have let the Republicans shut the government down.
Yeah.
They should have, because this is the problem, is it looks like the Democrats caved again. And there are millions and millions of voters out there who want a fight, a real fight. So somebody likened, well, as you know, last week I said the Democrats, for Trump's speech, they brought ping pong paddles and T-shirts to a gunfight. Somebody has since, some Democrat since then it says that the Democrats brought a casserole to a knife fight. The point is, nobody believes that the Democrats are doing enough to fight the Republicans. This is what Trump is doing is historically evil, and the Democrats are still trying to play by the rules, act as if they're running against McCain or somebody. And that's not what they're up against. And so we have to do whatever it takes to stop Trump from doing, and MAGA from doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is an easy answer, but I'm with you, Monroe. I'm like, wow, no resistance whatsoever.
Right.
It's just...
And that's the frustration. Now, one of the criticisms of that, the analogy is that the Democrats right now don't have a leader. And so that's why they're sort of all over the map with it. And that's true. There's no leader yet. And so this is a grassroots movement that's happening with Democrats and some Republicans now and independents protesting the cuts. They're having protests all over the country for this. And as happened with the civil rights movement back in the 50s, a leader emerged out of that. The anti-war movement had some leaders emerge out of it. And so I'm sure that will happen within the next few months. We will have a leader or leaders emerge. It might be Crockett out of Texas. It may be AOC. It's going to be some of the young people, maybe Frost, but it's going to be some of the young Democrats who are not in favor of the good old boys approach to it that Schumer is doing. It was great for the 90s what he did, but we're in a different time, in a more dangerous space, and we need different leaders and who are willing to take risk and try some new things to stop this while it's spiraling out of control.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't think it was great in the 90s at all. Just to answer that point, what you're describing is an ideological battle on the Democratic side between the more centrists and the lefties. And you and I have had this discussion, debate for as long as we've known each other.
Right.
And in particular over the last decade or so, when we deal with Bernie Sanders. So I'm not going to remind you of this discussion / debate. I just feel as though, what they say, the chicken's coming home to roost. The Democratic Party's strategy that goes back to the 90s with Clinton, where you can make concessions to the Republicans constantly. You constantly move right, calling yourself moving to the center. You abandon the principles that supposedly are the core beliefs of your party. You dilute your message, and you allow the Republican Party to sort of capture the mainstream or the center. And I've been watching it for the last 30 years, as you just pointed out. And now we're at a crisis
Okay,
moment.
all right. Okay, then I take it back. You're right about that. But it goes back either the beginning. I blame it all on Reagan and Reaganomics. That's where it started.
Yeah. Or the
And
Democrats' response to Reagan.
yeah,
You're talking about the Democrats' response to Reagan.
right.
And like we had in Chicago, this is why I'm always so nostalgic about him. Harold Washington, our mayor, like stood up to Reagan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was one of the Democrats that stood up to Reagan. And then Danny Rostenkowski, who was the congressman for the Northwest Side, made a compromise with Reagan. Right there, we saw that split here in Chicago, Monroe. Follow me on this one. You were around. Harold Washington took the strong stand against Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party cuts, and Danny Rostenkowski, who is a Democrat in name from the Northwest Side, used his power in House and Ways to help Reagan pass a tax cut bill. They called it tax reform, and it was ushering in this age where of even more tax breaks for the wealthy. So this battle has been going on for our whole adult lifetime, Monroe. And this is the culminating.
Back in the 60s when I was in college, I can remember when conservative was a bad word. That even conservatives didn't say they were conservatives. Yeah. They came up with some other name for it. I can't remember what it was. But it's all been flipped on its head.
Yeah. All right. So I think.
So when I take back what I said about
that's a miracle, ladies. I've known this man since the early 80s. Okay. I think that may have been one of the few times the words "you're right" came out of Monroe's mouth regarding me. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That should be the title for this particular show.
You're right, Ben.
Right.
Say that again, Monroe. All right. It's all right. So since we're in agreement that the Democratic Party is relatively worthless, and by the way, I got to point this out. And this is what I was, we were talking before we went on the air. I said the reigning philosophy in the Democratic Party is to roll over, let Trump do what he wants, and then when the economy is trashed and destroyed, voters will turn to the Democrats and they'll rise again. That's the reigning philosophy. And you point out, no, it's not. Most people don't buy into that. And I go, but under the rules of the filibuster, of ending the filibuster, the 7 Democrats who agreed with that got more votes than the 40 that disagreed with it. Do you get what I'm saying, Monroe?
Yeah.
Like, it only took 7 Democrats.
Well, but we have this thing where Democrats believe in government and are just innately opposed to shutting government down. They know how to govern. They know what to do. And so it's difficult for them to, the whole concept of shutting government down.
Yeah.
Republicans haven't a clue as to govern. And so they're embracing chaos.
Yeah.
And so they were all for it, Trump and Musk included, with shutting government down. And the Democrats who are still old school figured out a way that they could try and rationalize stopping government from being shut down. And and there's a certain logic to it, but that's not what's necessary. right now. That's the conclusion I came to, is that Democrats have got to show some fight and do it, not just talk about it, not tweet about it, but actually do things. And so this one method that they've adopted, which I think will be impactful, is the Republicans. What they're pushing, what they're selling is so bad nobody wants it. So they can't even go to their constituents and have town hall meetings and talk about what they're doing. And so what the Democrats are doing now is going to the Lions Den and talking to the Republicans constituents and saying, yeah, you're right, this is bad. The eggs are more expensive than they were when Biden was president.
You mean Bernie Sanders is doing that? That's what Bernie's doing.
No, Bernie's doing it. Walz has been doing it. It's been more than one. There've been at least half a dozen Democrats who are doing it right now.
All right, so that's the Democrat,
and there will be more. This is working, and so they will be doing more and more of this.
Yeah. Well, two people who won't be doing it will be Chuck Schumer and Richard Durbin. That is for certain. And they represent a part of the Democratic Party that is just rolling over. Maybe they're tired. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, when it becomes obvious that this is a great tactic,
then they'll jump aboard.
Yeah, because Schumer's not out there now. It's because everybody's booing him.
Yeah, everybody's booing Schumer.
He's not out there for the same reason the Republicans aren't out there.
Yeah,
it's because nobody likes what Trump is doing.
Yeah. Well, so all right, let's move to the other guardrail, which are the judges, and I probably texted you this a weekend. I texted everybody. The New York Times headline was that Trump denies. Trump said the order didn't come out in time. He wasn't defying it. He talked about the judicial order preventing him from flying Venezuelans to El Salvador, and so he wasn't defying the judge. That the order just didn't come out in time. I go, well, that's reassuring that he's not openly defying the judge, but we're heading there. And the papers are filled with stories of a constitutional crisis.
Well, he's openly defying the judge. He's just lying about it.
Okay, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Now he's defying the judge. He's just lying about it, but he feels compelled to lie about it.
Right.
So Monroe, this is so classic what they're doing right now. They don't like Judge Boasberg's ruling, his initial ruling in the matter of flying Venezuelans to El Salvador. So they're now calling for him to be impeached. And there's articles of impeachment that have been introduced in Congress by a reliable MAGA congressperson. It won't pass because I can't imagine Schumer and Durbin bending that much for the Republican. They may be tempted.
No, well, and Roberts has spoken too.
Yeah, Chief Justice Roberts said that.
He had a little something to say. You don't impeach judges because you don't like their verdict.
Yeah,
you appeal the verdict.
Yeah, you appeal the verdict. But what I've noticed about MAGA is that they just don't stop. So this gets back to the Baby Bobby thing, where I read the article by Charlie Kirk that was talking about just let the virus destroy the eggs and the chickens, et cetera, and so forth. I'm like, well, nobody really believes this. And now I see Baby Bobby, who is the most powerful person when it comes to health in this country, advocating it. So I'm like, okay. So right now, petitioning to impeach this judge because they don't like his decision. They feel he's defying the emperor, is on a relative handful of MAGA people. But in Monroe, they'll push it. They don't stop. That's the difference between them and the Democrats. The Democrats roll over. The Democrats look for ways to compromise, to talk their way out of a position. They don't like to take a stand because they feel it's controversial. They have some of their donors may not like it. So Democrats retreat from a fight. Republicans MAGA in particular continually advances. So,
the reason that's happening is because the Democrats don't have a bench in the media. There's Hillary many years ago talked about this great right wing conspiracy that was out there, and it in fact exists. These people, they have you who worked on a liberal radio station. The liberal radio stations are about 10%.
Yeah.
And sometimes they aren't as liberal as they say they are. And in the meantime, you have all these right-wing media outlets. Yeah. All of them are repeating the same thing, the same rules, the same lies. And so that becomes a reality for half of the country because they hear it. That's all they hear. They're now only listening to right-wing media. You give them a fact from the New York Times, and they go, "Ha ha ha! That's the New York Times." Don't pay any attention to this. I've pointed out to people that the New York Times is in fact considered the newspaper of record, and so that's what the historians are going to be going to, not Newsmax or something.
Oh my God. Well, okay. So getting back, yes, you're correct. Their echo chamber will broadcast the message of impeaching a judge like Boasberg on the grounds that because they don't like his ruling, he's anti-American. And he's anti-Trump is all you have to say. And that's an impeachable offense in their minds anyway, and they will press that. And
exactly.
And then I'm just wondering, I'm just waiting for the Democrats to snap there. They snap everywhere else. So that as you go, it's impossible to imagine Chuck Schumer snapping at that. I'm like, well, we'll see. So it's a frightening moment. This concept that Trump's getting ready to just openly defy judicial rulings without just like you're correct. Your analysis is correct, Monroe. He defied it, and then he lied about defying it, and now he's continuing to lie about it.
Right.
And the details about when the planes took off and when the ruling came out, and was it a written ruling? And does he have to find a written?
It was in foreign land waters, so
yes,
they didn't have to go by it because
they didn't have to go by it, right?
Yeah, right.
And yes, absolutely.
And plus the ruling itself that they're trying to pull off from the 1700s has only been used twice, and both in very bad situations. Shouldn't be happening. We're not in war. The ruling they're using is that in war, then you could do this horrible thing that they're trying to do. Round up people and put them in concentration camps, what have you. This is only a war. This is comparable to the right wing's war on Christmas. It's not really a war, except they say it is.
Yeah, you mean the left wing's war on Christmas, the right wing's defense of Christmas. You're right.
No. The right wing says that their allegation is that the left is having a war on Christmas.
Right.
Because we say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas.
No, it's freaking madness. It's by the way, they've somehow or other. this is liberals, man. This is how liberals work. They're so scared, and I've watched it just across the board. So they figure, well, I could placate a conservative by repeating some of the things, the outrageous things he says. That conservative will be my political friend now. And I'm like, when will you guys ever learn? They're not going to like you because you agree with them on something like the war on Christmas. You're right. So they talk about the war on Christmas. And I've heard liberals say to me, well, Ben, why can't we say Merry Christmas? And I'm like, you can say Merry Christmas. Who's stopping you from saying Merry Christmas? We're going to get into this. Okay. Right. The concept of like what you can say and what you can't say in a little while, what
they do, because their media is much stronger than our media.
Yeah,
their media is propagandish, and ours is, well, on the one hand, this person said this, and on the other hand, this person said that. So I'm telling you all the positions so you can consider, and they're just flat out lying and exaggerating.
So this goes back to what I was starting the show with.
Yeah,
the New York Times article about Baby Bobby's proclamation that we should just let the virus rip and kill all the chickens and just rush through and it's a very interesting article, Monroe. I urge you to read it, urge all listeners to read it, because again, it does what you're saying. So it'll have like Dr. Billy Bob with 40 years of expertise in the field saying one thing, like, and then Baby Bobby, who's a lunatic, saying something else. And it's sort of like, it is what you said. It's one hand, okay, they say this, the experts say that. And you would expect, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say sophisticated because that's a bad word, but I'm going to use that word. You would expect just like a public, a critical thinking public to be able to distinguish the difference between a lunatic and an expert opinion. But more and more, it's reversed.
Yeah.
It's reversed, Monroe. It's because they're experts. They're not, they're like biased. It's like they've successfully flipped stuff. And then when, like I said, when people like you and me get upset about it, they say we're deranged. And so this is just like an ongoing propaganda war.
Right. It's just like some of your listeners, your audience, was upset when I said never trust a white man from South Africa.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I have been to South Africa. So I know how white people are, some white people, maybe not all, but what the white majority thinking in South Africa is. I was there in 2007, and I was on a media junket, Kaiser Family Foundation traveling media seminar on AIDS. And when we first got there was this white guy. We was bringing our luggage. We were on the way to our hotel. We were bringing our luggage, and this white South African got upset because we didn't make way for him. Get out, basically get off the sidewalk. That would be the American analogy for it. And this one journalist, Gregory Branch, who was a producer for CBS, had been a producer for CBS, he yelled at him, "Get used to it," meaning we don't have to step off the sidewalk for you anymore. Wow. And as I was telling you earlier, before with our earlier telephone conversation, I went to the museum, the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. When you enter the museum, there's a plaque, metal plaque, raised letters or what have you, about it's a pretty good size, and it says, I may be paraphrasing, but this is basically what it said. When the white man came to Africa, he had the Bible, we had the land. Now he has the land and we have the Bible. And that's the situation. That's Elon Musk's thinking. That's Phil's thinking. I forget his first name. Jason.
Peter.
Phil's thinking. Two white men from South Africa. Two billionaires from South Africa. Trump is now offering to take the poor, downtrodden white man from South Africa into America because the blacks are treating him so badly. And so I stand by what I say. That, and that's not to say every last white person in South Africa is wrong or bad, but they have an attitude. They are white privilege on steroids, basically.
Yeah. So Monroe, I think it was the last show you said that.
Yeah.
And well, actually, you've said that a few times on the show.
Exactly.
And so the first, how do I really want to say this without offending any of my listeners? I don't understand how anybody can have an objection to a black man who grew up in America, lived in Gary, Indiana,
right,
went to college. I'm just retracing the history of Monroe Anderson, ladies and gentlemen. Went to a majority white university, University of Indiana, Bloomington.
Right.
Then went to work for white-owned newspapers and dealt with white people directly. Listened to them. Was in the belly of the freaking beast, okay? Heard the things they said openly.
Has lived in Lincoln Park since 1976, and it's still scaring white people when he walks down the street. White women. They still clutch their purses.
It's so real. I know. If you've met Monroe Anderson, okay, it's like he's the whatever. Anyway, the point is, like, so this entire history you've had, and the things that white people have said to you,
right,
and they just say it to you. You're a black man. They say it to you because they feel confident that it's acceptable to say the stupid things they're saying to you. They don't imagine that would be insulting. They don't imagine that it shows a bias. They don't realize that if the same things were said to them, they'd be really upset, or they don't care, whatever. This is the experience that you have had for how many ever years of life you had, which is even more than I've had, which hard is that to believe.
Actually, it didn't happen when I was growing up in Gary because there are no white people around.
That is, okay. But growing up in Gary, you see, maybe upon leaving Gary, you see like the unfairness of our system, the inequities of a segregated system. You follow me? You see it. You may not realize it's unfair because you're living there. And then when you leave it, you go, oh my God, you know? So anyway, my point is why they would be offended that you would say, I don't trust a white man from South Africa. That's like an overstated, it's basically irony and overstatement and hyperbole to make a point. Monroe,
well,
I'm like,
not only that, but if you see what he and Trump, what Musk and Trump are doing, then the question is, why would I trust one?
And that gets me to this. We'll just bring this one up. This one here. So I'm always sending Monroe headlines. I sent him a lot of headlines, some of which he reads, some of which he doesn't, because he's got enough headlines in his world as it is. But I'm sending you headlines about Donald Trump's ongoing efforts, and this is how you put it, to make black people invisible and to erase the history erase the history of race relations in this country. And it's so bizarre and twisted and hypocritical, obviously. They wanted to keep Bragg's name on Fort Bragg because they said that even though it was a Confederate, you would be erasing history to take the name off. That was what MAGA said. Now Trump comes in and he wants to completely erase the history of segregation and racism in this country. And here's a headline: Trump administration removes ban on segregated facilities in federal contracts. This is unbelievable. The administration of Donald Trump has removed an explicit ban on, quote, segregated facilities like waiting rooms, restaurants, and drinking fountains for federal contractors, a memo issued by the General Service Administration showed. So we're going back to the days when segregation will be legal. And at the end of the article, this is an attempt, as Monroe was saying, to say, on the one hand, this is what one side says, and this is what the other side says. This is classic mainstream journalism, Monroe, that I'm going to read to you, and then I would love to hear you riff on this, okay? So this is the context of this article, which is in Reuters. Rights advocates say measures Trump is trying to dismantle aimed to uplift marginalized groups and address the continued effects of historical and generational inequity. Trump and his allies defend the actions by saying his orders aim to remove what they call discrimination against other Americans, including white people and men. So on the one hand, civil rights advocates say this is to help black people. On the other hand, Donnie says it's to help white people who are now being discriminated against. I need to know how prohibiting the segregation of facilities in our country is discriminating against white people. I turn to you as always for explanation, Monroe, because you're our foremost authority on white people.
Right.
This is how preposterous their rhetoric is at this moment, but it's the governing rhetoric of the world. They're saying it's discriminatory against white people,
right,
to ban segregation.
Right. Well, not only to ban segregation, but to say that segregation is being banned. They're just supposed to be able to do it, and we forget all about it, like slavery. I mean, because I have heard white people make the argument that those of us who were slaves were better off here as slaves than they were in Africa. That we were, in fact, done a favor because we were brought over here. And last month, actually, I was in Tanzania, and I went to the Slavery Museum in Zanzibar. And this is something I never thought about for reasons I don't know why I didn't. But in getting the Africans from their villages to the slave ships, they were treated worse than we were when we got here, because they would go into entire villages and just take the entire village and kidnap them, enslave them, have them in chains, and sometimes some of the slaves had to walk for a year to get to the destination where they could be shipped in the Middle Passage to America. They raped the women. They broke up families. They did all the same things. There's this one place in one island in Zanzibar called Prison Island, and it's where the recalcitrant slaves, people who didn't really want to be slaves and were rebellious, they were taken there and they were tortured and did all sorts of things to either whip them in shape or kill them. And the treatment, this wasn't, and interestingly enough, this wasn't so much white people. It was mainly Arabs who were doing this, and some Indians. but there were some whites involved in it also. And and I never thought about, I didn't think about it at all one way or the other. It's just we did the Middle Passage. Half the people there's one estimate that somewhere about 5 or 6 million Africans died in the voyage on the Middle Passage to get here to be slaves because of the treatment. So it's been bad. It's still bad.
And the notion that what you just described is somehow or other better than like distinguishing the life that Black people have had in America, and that is better than everything that you described, like what got them to America. The notion that these are separate things is so preposterous,
right?
And so then you have to ask yourself, like, what's going on in the brain of someone who says it? And the person, like, someone says something that you so illogical. Follow me on this, Monroe.
Yeah.
Just so then you have to ask yourself, well, what's going on in that person's brain? Does that person not see you as a human being the way they view themselves? Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, do they view you as some kind of alien creature that's different in every way than them? Or do they not see you at all?
When I was at Indiana University back in the 60s, there was this guy named Jim Curl, whose father worked for CBS in New York in some position, but this kid was privileged up the yin yang. And he said one day when we were talking, because we were friends when we hung out with him, because he was a white liberal. He said that in order for a Black person to be acceptable, they had to have some white blood in them. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that was the idea. Because my roommate, who was from Gary also, and had gone to Tolleson High School, which was integrated, he knew the mentality. And so we had to hold him back from kicking Curl's ass right in the back. I mean, he was on his way. We had to push him back.
I mean, that's like illustrating the point I was trying to make. You just illustrated with a perfect example. Like, okay, so I'll cut the kid some slack. Your 18-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever he is, he's in a college dorm. So
he didn't make 21 because he died or OD'd. He's doing drugs.
Oh man,
right.
That make me feel real bad
with
that. I did not know. I never heard of the dude until you just mentioned his name. Wow, I did not know that. Wish you had told me that before. I was about to say what I'm about to say. But the thing is that we all say stupid things. But
and we do stupid.
We do stupid things, but like, maybe I overthink what I do than the average person. But I'm like always thinking, like, what is it? Like, what am I really saying here? Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, so if I were to say something as stupid as you got a few drops of white blood in you, so therefore you're better than the other guy. If I were to say something so freaking stupid,
right?
It's like, okay, what am I saying? You know what I mean? What am I really saying? And then what you're really saying is that you're on kind of some kind of weird racist trip. You got a lot of issues about black and white, and you got to look in the mirror. And I just think that would be an honest reflection. And why do I have those opinions? And where did I pick this up? And it's sort of like the same thing, Monroe, with anti-Jewishness. Follow me on this one. So it's like people pretend like there's no anti-Jewishness out there.
Right.
Like lefties. It's not it's anti-Israel. There's no anti-Jewishness at all. That's not where we're coming from, et cetera, and so forth. And I'm like, I'm not saying that all criticism of Israel is hating Jews, but I don't know. Think about where you've come from. Think about the comments you've heard from your relatives. Think about the stuff you've been exposed to your whole life. You're going to tell me there's no anti-Jewishness somewhere inside you? You're going to just tell me that? I could tell you from my life, I'm almost 70 years old. I've heard so many anti-Jewish stuff in my life going way back. So I'm like, I don't believe you. And it's the same thing with blacks. You're going to tell me you haven't heard the same slurs I've heard? You don't think that impacts you when you hear at the dinner table when you're a kid how black? I'm going to clean up what they'll say, but you know what they would say, Monroe, back in the 60s, N-word this, N-word that, being inferior. You don't think that gets in your brain?
My mother was a housewife, except occasionally when we were on difficult times, she would go and do housework. And so at one point, she was working for this Jewish woman who was conservative. This woman hated Kennedy. This is back at that time period. And she would talk about how Kennedy was a bed hopper. Anyway,
my she knew that already?
Huh?
Wait,
yeah, in the 60s, when he was still alive.
JFK, that Kennedy? Not baby Bobby's daddy, but John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the president of the United States.
Bed hopper.
She already knew that he was a bed hopper back in 1960 or 61?
Right, before he was dead,
She had good intel.
Well, she was a conservative, so she did, because they as soon as they could put that out there, they did. Anyway, my mother was talking to her, and she talked about how somebody Jewed her down.
Wait, your mother said this to the Jewish lady?
Huh?
Your mother said it to the Jewish lady. Go ahead,
Jewish lady. And obviously the Jewish lady corrected her on that. And she accepted the correction. She hadn't thought about it because that was a term that was used at that time in Gary.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Right.
Oh my goodness, have I heard that? Have I heard that one before?
Right.
And so there's just so much bias embedded in so many, in just our upbringing, and for people to be astonished or upset that you said you don't trust white men from South Africa is. I don't even really know what to say, Monroe. But I will say this. Trump is trying to make white people the victims and black people the aggressors.
Trump, first of all, Trump, anytime things, because of his illness, his narcissism, anytime something doesn't go the way he thinks it should for him, then he's a victim. It's he should be able to screw the Constitution. If he wants to do something because he's the president, he ought to be able to do it. Although his attitude was not that way when Biden was president, it was not that way where the president ought to be able to do it. When Obama was president, it was not that. It wasn't that way then. But now, because he's president, he should be able to do it. Or the fact that a jury of his peers convicted him, 34 charges that they conspired against him.
Yeah. No, he's always a victim. All right, we've run out of time, and I'll hold off to another show, the George Carlin list. I'll just tease the George Carlin list. We'll have a little fun with that. We'll do that at another show. So, Monroe, thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you real soon. All right?
Okay. All right. Very good.
And I also want to thank producer Nate. He does an outstanding job. Hey, producer Nate, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Peace and love, everybody.